'cause I got a bad case of loving you. No pill's gonna cure my ill. I got a bad case of loving you.
Okay, so maybe love is a bit strong, but I do consider Doc a brother from another mother. If I had a Wang and I lived in the UK, I like to think I'd be his twin in many ways. I have that hat. I have those sheets. I share his absolute rejection of genital mutilation, and I do have that same vein of artist's temperament running through me, though he is far more accomplished as a musician and an artist. He got all the talent. I'm the red-headed stepchild doing lab experiments in the basement. Fuck, I think I just described the plot of Johnny Test, if Johnny grew up to be a musical genius with a liver made apparently of Pyrex. Anyway, were I not expected to be a respectable in my real life, most of my videos would also likely be done with a heavy injection of Jack Daniels. And in honor of the good doctor, I've had 2 pints before writing and recording. I'm a total lightweight, and will probably crack another one when I'm done. Sláinte! So in the spirit of passion, you're going to get a bit of raw bunny, the same way as in his videos, you'll get a bit of raw Doc. So, DoctorRandomercam. He's your next-door neighbor. He began as a working stiff, making his way downtown, walking fast, bunch of other shit I can't remember. Anyway. When you watch his videos, you're going to see he demonstrates understanding of engineering, science, medicine, philosophy, but perhaps more importantly, he knows how to make people laugh. He's a philosopher-entertainer. He's also been doing YouTube videos for a few years now, yet there are still some who don't know him, which is part of why I'm doing this video. He doesn't heavily self-promote, he just makes videos, puts himself out, and lets the market judge. And the market has judged him as someone worth listening to. What an accomplishment is it that he can now make videos as a means to pay his rent? Fucking well done. Anyway, Doc produces extremely entertaining videos, mostly from a men's human rights perspective. Though I don't put him in the category of clinging desperately to identifiers as a substitute for real content and argument. You're going to find Easter eggs aplenty in his videos, with obscure scientific, historical, and pop culture references. And I will say, as a fan of the Honey Badgers, his addition to their panel as Evil Panda is nothing but gold. But underneath the entertainment factor, there is a deeply passionate man fighting for himself and others like him. And part of why I adore Doc is his hard line on genital mutilation. So, everyone's favorite breakfast conversation, genital mutilation. This is such a polarizing issue. You have those on one side who absolutely condemn female genital mutilation, but still consider male genital mutilation kinda sorta okay. And it's true, they're not the same thing in the overall detailed practice, although type 4 female genital mutilation is actually less invasive and permanent in aggregate than the regular circumcision you may know. You have the religious proponents, you have the dregs at the bottom of the barrel who consider appearance and attractiveness to women as a serious argument. Are you fucking kidding me? Creepy. And then you have the middling ground, who either aren't aware of the bulk of data, or have studied just enough to come to the conclusion that circumcision of men offers health benefits that outweigh any detraction based on feelings or ethics. I may eventually do an entire video on male genital mutilation. I'm pretty passionate about it. But right now, I'll say that Doc is one of the loudest and most consistent voices against it. He's demonstrated knowledge about the issue, and I for one am glad he mentions it as often as he does. This practice is deeply rooted in religiosity, and even the medical arguments for it do not follow the established ethical path for signing off on the removal of a body part. Remember the pushback Angelina Jolie got for deciding to have both breasts and her ovaries removed to prevent some future development of cancer? And that was a choice by an adult about her own body. Preemptively removing body parts before they are diseased is just not standard operating practice without some really serious, empirical, immediate risk factors. Not maybe sort of someday future risk factors. And the biggest science-based argument for male genital mutilation is the studies indicating some protection against STIs, particularly HIV, if the foreskin is removed. But these proponents rarely mention the criticisms of these studies in terms of lead time, or the other studies that indicate circumcision has no effect on things like chlamydia or gonorrhea. So, male genital mutilation is the outlier in terms of ethics that dictate body parts be removed for non-idiopathic disease. That being, STIs do not generally arise naturally. They're primarily the consequence of fucking, which is a choice. You will not be exposed to HIV just by sitting on your couch, or on a toilet seat, or by shaking someone's hand. And please, those of you who still cling tenaciously like a monkey with a coconut to male circumcision as a means to prevent HIV, put some time in volunteering with your local HIV/AIDS clinic. You will very quickly see how little male circumcision matters. Far better to follow the general ethical standard of promoting health and wellness by low-risk preventative choices, because a staggering number of men with cut dicks have died from AIDS. And honestly, if your argument for male genital mutilation is women like it better, you are a sick motherfucker. If you wouldn't give your 10-year-old daughter breast implants because men like it better, then fuck off with making your son's penis more appealing to women. And moms, talking about the sex appeal of your son's dink? Gross. He's not for your or any other woman's consumption, you fucking pedo. But back to Doc. I've never gotten a single whiff of misogyny. You know, the real kind, not the lacy green kind, from him. But as always, I'll address criticism. Criticism of Doc is not widespread. The closest I could find was in the comments section of his video entitled I'm a Rapist, which was a response to YouTuber Savannah Brown's poem, and I used poem as loosely as possible, about I'm a slut. Oh my. I think you could make a drinking game out of the use of the word bitter there by critics of men's rights advocates and Doc specifically. But okay, let's look at bitter and how it relates to the concept of this video. Passion. Why is being bitter bad? I'm gonna skip past the obvious analogy of how ideologies of keep sweet are undeniably religious and culty in nature. Bitter is applied to MGTOW. Those men have clearly just had a bad experience with women and have gone full piss baby. And feminists. Those women have clearly just had a bad experience with men and have gone full retard. I discount both of those lines of reasoning, mostly because my field is concentrated in neuroscience, and I understand that habituation and sensitization are real things, but they are not a smoking gun for why an individual chooses an ideology over the breadth of time. I've made an intensive study of PTSD, and I do understand that triggers can be genuine, though definitely not as Tumblrinas or various campuses would like to present them. In fact, due to limbic influence, triggers are more likely to be smells or sounds that can seem unrelated to the event at hand unless you dig deeper. It's also why I look at Twitter PTSD claims and fucking drink. Because fuck you in the ear, Melody Hensley. But bitter to describe Doc? Maybe so. I think he has his eyes more wide open to what men face, their pressures, and the real-life legislated obstacles to freedom and equality men are hit with. I don't think an accusation of bitterness should discount an argument, as though being bitter at mistreatment means there was no mistreatment. How else is someone supposed to react to widespread mistreatment but with anger and bitterness? Ugh. So let's go to the next level of Dante's hell. Accusations of anger and bitterness as a means to discount an argument. And frankly, how often that accusation is used specifically against the big bad men. Anger has a lot of masculine connotations. Look at Inside Out. Look at Shives, who, incidentally, blocked me on Twitter preemptively without my ever having mentioned him, you separating anal prolapse. Look at the arguments surrounding toxic masculinity. Anger is equated with the worst masculinity has to offer. Well, I hate to break it to proponents of the idea of toxic masculinity, but anger is not only permissible when you have a vajay. Anger does not magically become toxic because it is attached to a Y chromosome. And if you think it does, then you, my friend, are afraid of men. I'm not going to speculate too much on the causes of that. although I'll link to an interesting video by Karen Strawn talking about that particular subject in the low bar. I had a comment on my last video that I want to highlight because it was one of the best compliments I have ever received. Ka-fa-ra wrote, quote, "Your unusual anger was as palpable as your usual wit and intellect in this video." Aw, thanks, bro. Until someone is truly angry, my theory goes, they don't truly understand just what we are up against. End quote. Yep, I'm angry. I'm bitter. I'm passionate, as much as I try my best to present a reasonable and neutral front in the SJW Rehab series at least. Anger is obviously not just a male trait. The glaring difference is that my anger usually gets something of a pass. As in Lorena Bobbitt. Just have a gander at this clip sometime. I'll link it in the low bar. But male anger is feared and loathed and denigrated. Kathy Young, in a recent piece for the Boston Globe, characterized A Voice for Men as offering, quote, "a steady diet of vulgar woman-bashing that discredits any valid points they may make," end quote. Kathy, you're off my fucking Christmas list, seriously. I'm pretty new to A Voice for Men, so I cruised through and read for about an hour looking for woman-bashing. I don't care about the vulgar part. I don't need a fainting couch and smelling salts every time someone says the word cunt to me. I could not find woman-bashing. I found criticisms of specific women saying and doing specific things. I found feminism bashing, but feminism is not representative of women, but is its own ideology. But no, I did not see hate for women. I didn't see hate for women in the case of Howard Goodman either. You've likely never heard of him. He's a Toronto District School Board trustee who, after doggedly pushing for investigation into Director of Education at the time Donna Kwan's financial practices, was charged with forcible confinement and criminal harassment. Interestingly enough, another critic of Kwan's practices was also charged with sexual harassment. A woman. I'm going to read a bit from a Globe and Mail article about the situation. Quote, "Mr. Goodman has often clashed with Ms. Kwan and some trustees as he questioned the integrity of staff members and pushed for more stringent rules governing conflicts of interest. Just last month, Mr. Goodman wrote to Ontario Education Minister Liz Sandals, asking her to give members of the TDSB's Audit Committee the go-ahead to speak to auditors, who found that accountability has been circumvented at the school board. The charges against Mr. Goodman are the latest in a string of controversies that have plagued Canada's largest school board, where trustees have been deeply divided and infighting has taken centre stage. The school board has struggled with spending scandals, financial mismanagement, and questions over Ms. Kwan's leadership. This is the second time that a trustee who has pushed for more transparency has found themselves in hot water. Trustee Elizabeth Moyer was censured by the board earlier this year after an outside investigator accused her of sexually harassing 2 senior staff members. The year prior, Ms. Moyer had gone to the Ministry of Education requesting an investigation into the board's procedures. So once again, the legal system is being used to punish opposition and dissuade others from opposing. But here's the difference. Mr. Goodman was actually arrested for what, as came out in court, amounted to little more than being a loudmouth frustrated by constantly being stonewalled. There's that passion again. Elizabeth Moyer was censured, but not arrested, for what is arguably as severe a trespass as criminal harassment. So why were these 2 people treated so differently? I would say it is because it is more culturally believable that a man would lose his temper and become violent, and less culturally believable that a woman could do real harm through sexual harassment. This little tete-a-tete represents everything that is wrong with our sentencing gaps and legal precepts of blindness toward women as sexual offenders. So no, fuck off with that. You cannot ethically give female bad behavior a pass because it's attached to a vagina, and then accuse male behavior of being inherently worse because it's attached to a penis. At least not if you're trying to evaluate neutrally. And those who focus more on the tone of the content than the content itself are taking the easy way out and feeding into the gender stereotype of men equal angry, so bad, And women equal crying victims, so good. But tone doesn't always have to be angry. What about being light or entertaining? So, to the concept of entertainment. Have you ever observed that the most popular people making anti-feminist arguments usually incorporate a strong entertainment value? Like Bearing, Sugar Tits, Undoomed, and DoctorRandomercam, who uses puppets, and I adore that. But the people making pro-feminist arguments often don't bother with any real entertainment value, but merely put themselves on camera looking angry and righteous, occasionally crying. There are exceptions, of course, but look at the aggregate. How many pro-feminist videos have you watched where you actually laughed? And not at the absurdity of the content being so earnestly expressed, but at the cleverness and wit of the presenter. Entertainment has value, and being able to laugh is a sign of security. Having a sense of humor has value. Instinctive belly laughter is the literal antithesis of the SJW commandments, and Doc is brilliantly entertaining because he is so passionate. Passion is imperfect. But if you've been in the SJW culture yourself for any length of time, you know you're presented with a very clear picture of what kinds of passion are okay and what kinds are not. Focusing on tone is way down the list of solid debate practice. But there is a very clear gender bias on who is allowed to be loud and angry and who must sit on their hands and speak quietly. There are other biases in there too, such as race, but I'm not kicking that particular wasp nest today. Besides, Sierra McCord covered it quite well, and I'll link her in the low bar too. I've profiled some very polished and well-known leaders in the anti-SJW sphere. They have letters after their names. They're politicians. They're household names in the YouTube community and beyond. But I'll be frank. I personally don't give two shits about letters after names, subscriber counts, or establishment in politics. I care about argument, and just as importantly, the passion behind them. Fuck, I'm an academic, and Doc speaks more truth than most of my professors and peers, which says a lot for the direction academia is going, as we are supposed to hold to this high critical standard of accreditation, but have become completely derailed by walking on political eggshells. I would take one Doc over 100 gender studies professors in terms of critical thinking and rationality, and more to the point, in terms of future good. And the fact that all of this clear thinking is delivered with humor, an original soundtrack, and clever illustrations wouldn't change a fucking thing. So I hope you check out Doc's channel, and thank you for listening.